Hi, today I'm going to be talking about the growing sensitivity of animal rights in correlation to zoos. I really want to educate everyday citizens who grew up going to zoos for entertainment, like myself, on the harsh reality of animal cruelty occurring within majority of the zoos that we grew up going to. I want my presentation to allow my audience to leave with a better understanding of how cruel zoos can actually be to these wild animals and realize what they're paying for and supporting by going to these zoos and for entertainment with their family or friends. My name is Bailey Smith, and my speech is focused on educating you guys on the harsh reality behind zoos and the zoo industry itself, and the multiple concepts that question animal rights in modern day society as it only continues to grow. Because I know within the past 10 years, animal cruelty, sensitivity, and awareness has only been increasing. And I spent a good amount of time researching multiple different articles regarding animal cruelty occurring within zoos and different opinions on how and why this cruelty is occurring within them. But I've also spent a good amount of time diving into the other side of the conversation so I could control bias and educating myself on different opinions on why zoos aren't cruel. Because I really wanted to have a well-rounded perception of the animals and the opinions people have on animals in zoos. And overall, I decided to talk about that I do think that zoos are overall cruel to animals. While zoos do have multiple flaws when it comes to being suited for wild animals, I found that there's three main concepts I want to talk about today. One being that they don't provide large enough enclosures for wild animals, and two, the evident mental health effects that they have on these wild animals, and three, the negative outcomes of not having a wild animal live in their natural habitat. And I think that these are the main points that I think need to be spoken upon when talking about animal cruelty in zoos. And I really think it is crazy to learn about how our 2 hour day trip of entertainment can affect these wild animals their whole entire lives. And this brings me to point one. Limiting wild animals to a specific small enclosure keeps them from living their life in a natural way. These enclosures force animals to be in the light of public eye for entertainment at all times, which leads to absolutely no privacy. And a perfect example of this is the tragic death of Harambe. If he had his own space and a choice of when to be viewed by the public, no curious child would have even been in the position to crawl into his enclosure, and no care staff would have had to make the horrible decision of killing a highly endangered gorilla. And I think this really just shows that these enclosures are not suited and not a healthy way for animals to be living in their whole entire lives. I read in an article by David Aspinall called Time to Make Zoos a Thing of the Past, and he said that no matter how many zoos try and make enclosures big, no matter how many branches they put in them, and no matter how many beautiful paintings they put on the walls, none of them will compare to their natural habitat that these animals were meant to be in. And I think that that was a really well said and well worded, because at zoos, you see all these pretty branches and the pretty paintings in the background, and you think, oh, they're trying to adjust it to their natural habitat. But at the end of the day, that's nowhere near the same, which is really, really sad. And I think that keeping these animals in enclosures do have harsh consequences. And that brings me to point two. People often don't even recognize the mental health effects presented in animals in zoo enclosures because most people have only ever seen wild animals in zoos. So, I mean, when people, a perfect example of this is when animals in enclosures perform repetitive movements or trace their steps back and forth or sit motionless or even bite the bars of their enclosure. These are all examples of stress behaviors. And another example from this is a baby orangutan in Cincinnati Zoo called Mahal. His name was Mahal, and he died at the age of 4 from pneumonia from a lung infection caused by germs from constantly biting on the bars of his enclosure as a stress behavior. And I read in an article by Wanda Embar, published on veganpeace.com, and she was explaining that these behaviors are all caused by conditions such as depression, boredom, psychoness, and some zoos actually give antidepressants or tranquilizers to control the behavior problems of some of their animals to appeal to the public even more, which just proves that the health of the animals is not their first priority. And again, this just shows that there's no comparing the natural habitat of a wild animal versus the enclosure in a zoo. And this brings me to point three. I think that forcing a wild animal to grow up and live in an enclosure for entertainment their whole life, compared to living in their natural habitat, threatens their health to a much larger extent than most of us understand. People often disregard the fact that animals like polar bears or felines are used to hunting, and whereas in zoos, they're just given their meat in the morning and night, which just is taking away their natural instincts. And I think another thing is most animals kept in zoos would naturally roam tens of miles a day. And an example of this is elephants. The average lifespan of a zoo elephant is about 16 to 18 years old, whereas in wild elephants, they can live up to 50 to 70. That's an insane gap. And this is because elephants in the wild, they travel tens of miles a day with family members, up to 10. And in zoos, they're usually kept in pairs or even isolated. And I actually read in the Association of Zoological Association of America, it requires that zoos require for a single elephant to be provided with 1,800 square feet of space outdoor and 400 square feet in space, which is insane because in the wild they'd be roaming tens of miles a day. And I actually have a picture here to show the difference of an elephant in an enclosure in its zoo versus what it would be doing in its natural habitat, which is really sad. And then another thing, which is I think that is kind of thought about a lot, honestly, is that the climate of these wild animals' habitats are rarely accurately represented in their enclosures. And a prime example of this is polar bears. I also have a picture of this to show you guys the difference. This is a polar bear in its natural habitat in Antarctica in below freezing weather versus in the Cincinnati Zoo, again, this polar bear. This example really makes me sad because I just don't understand how that's like okay to put them in a habitat that they're not meant to be in. And while I do love seeing animals in person and learning about them. I'm a pre-vet major. I really love animals. Like, I think the more I educate myself about the reality behind zoos, the more I realize that zoos aren't suited for wild animals to be living a healthy lifestyle. And at the end of the day, animals' health are I think should be the priority of everyone. And so yeah, today I think we discussed the truth behind many of the romanticized concepts of zoos that many people don't really realize the cruelty within them. And I think it's become a common opinion that wild animals should not live in enclosures their whole life, as it isn't a healthy lifestyle for them. Enforcing these animals into enclosures that are fractions of the size of their natural habitat, letting their mental health plummet, and taking away the option of acting on many of their natural instincts are all feeding into this growing awareness of cruelty within zoos. And I think that once you guys really start realizing the signs of cruelty occurring within zoos and understanding how sad and boring their lives must be, zoos will look completely different to you. Because trust me, I used to beg my mom to take me to the zoo every single summer, and here I am presenting this project to you guys. So yeah, thank you.